You're listening to the Money Pig Podcast, brought to you by Goodwin Investment Advisory, where our mission is to lead people to financial peace, independence, and generosity. I'm your host, Reid Trego, and again, joining us this week is Justin Pitcock.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a little while.
Certified financial planner with GIA. We're happy to have you back. Always good to have the bright guy in the room.
Well, if you say so.
Yeah, you got to help me out because I have all these questions, right? So you came up with this topic idea for this time, but it's actually a fair question. I could ask you this. Should I convert my IRA to a Roth?
Man, we get asked that question all the time.
Do we? Okay,
oh, yeah.
Really?
Yep, all the time. So, let's start with why.
Okay,
right?
Let's do that.
And so there's two reasons. Okay. One is RMDs can get really big.
Required minimum distributions.
Yes.
I'm here to decipher.
Thank you.
Okay.
So RMDs can get really big, especially in your 80s. If you're lucky enough to go into your 90s, the RMD can get massive and push you into the highest tax brackets of your life. Also, Social Security is another reason to do Roth conversions or save Roth versus pre-tax. So Social Security income can be taxable income or tax-free income. And it depends on how much other income you have. And we'll get more into that, I think, here in just a minute.
Okay, awesome. So here, let me just say this. I hear when I've met with clients too, they all get all hyped up on this. Everything has to be a Roth. I got to get stuff out of traditional. I can't have anything in a brokerage account. It's all got to be Roth. Roths get all this hype. So
tax-free is nice.
Tax-free is nice, but why else?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's the RMDs and Social Security, but
because you don't have to take required minimum distributions at a certain age for Roth.
Right. You do on pre-tax accounts, like a traditional 401k, traditional IRA. You're going to have to take RMDs on that money, but if you've converted that to Roth or saved in Roth, you are not required to take an RMD on the Roth. So that's a big reason, and that RMD, the older you get, the larger that RMD is going to get too. So it can become like a very large, chunk of money. And I was looking at we were doing a financial plan for somebody yesterday, and we were looking at RMDs hitting $500,000-$600,000 a year later on in life. And so, maybe some Roth conversions here would be helpful because he would pay significantly less now than he would pay later on that size of an RMD.
Those are significant. So, and just to make it really simple, because I like simple, on a traditional IRA, it's you get the tax deduction when you contribute it. So when you start withdrawing, the government is going to want to tax that. And they set a date by which you have to begin withdrawing, and that's what the required minimum distribution is. Where a Roth, you pay the tax when you earn it and you contribute, and then they don't care when you take it out because they already tax the money.
They already get their tax.
And it's going to
grow tax-free. It's going to compound. All that growth is tax-free when you take it out.
So the Roth dollars in a retirement portfolio are usually the last ones that come out.
Normally, the typical order of distribution would be your taxable money first, your tax-deferred, and then your Roth. But there's a lot more to it that, on an individualized basis that we would need to strategize, and actually we'd want to pull from all three of those tax types. So let's kind of explain what are the three money types.
Yeah, and that's before you do that, we're gonna do that. But I want to say this is why, this is not. There's a disclosure at the end of this, right? But this is not personal financial advice. You really we have to dig into each individual situation very carefully before we can actually give you great advice for you, the listener, but we can give you a general overview here. So you start to understand this. And some of this gets a little weedy and a little complicated. A lot of times you have to listen to this kind of stuff 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 12 times. So if you've never heard all this before, just listen.
On repeat.
Check it out. Just put it on repeat, and it'll start to make more sense as you go through and listen more times.
Hopefully, as you listen to this, you'll pick up some principles where maybe you can identify, gosh, maybe I should be saving on a Roth basis, or maybe I should consider Roth conversions because some of the things that we talk about are relevant to your situation. So,
awesome. Yep. So 3 types of money.
There's
There's coins, there's crypto, and there's bills. Is that what we're going with?
Yeah, sure.
No. Okay.
What about like barter exchange?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. That's currency.
Yeah. All right. So we have Roth money. That's, tax-free. You've paid tax on that money already. If it's in a Roth, it's going to grow tax-free. So all the growth, all the interest and dividends get to compound on a tax-free basis. You never have to pay tax on that money again in your life. So it's the pay now, play later, money type.
If they'd have just called it that, it would be simpler.
Yeah.
Instead, they named it after
anyway?
It's a senator, Senator Roth.
Oh, you for real?
Yeah.
All right. Well, learn something new.
I'm
today.
older than you are.
Man.
I remember these things.
All right. So tax deferred, or like a traditional 401k, 403b, traditional IRA, that money you get a tax deduction and you save when you put that money in that type of account. However, you've deferred paying tax on it until later in life when you pull that money out. So we call that the tax deferred bucket. Then there's the taxable bucket.
Which I don't love the name of this, but I understand why. So I'm going to back up really quick because anything in an IRA or a 401k can grow over time with capital gains, dividends, all that stuff. And inside those vehicles, it is not taxed. Why this one's called taxable is because
as it earns interest and dividends and you realize capital gains, you will get a 1099 that reports that income. And so you'll pay tax as your portfolio grows.
That's right. Yes, thank you.
So it's, the Roth is pay all up front. The traditional or the deferred is pay at the end, pay when you take it out. And then taxable is pay as you go.
Beautiful. That's the best. We should just name them that way.
Yeah, pay as you go.
Okay, I love it.
And so if you're planning for retirement, if you're in the accumulation phase, you're building your wealth, we want to build money in all three money types. But we work with a lot of folks who are fixing to retire or have retired, and maybe they don't have all three money types.
I love that you said fixing to retire because that means they're about to retire. But younger than that, they would be fixing to get ready to retire.
I like fixins, yeah.
Fixing to get ready to is before fixing.
Yep.
Okay. Just as a translation for Justin who grew up in sticks of Georgia.
All right. So we've got those three money types. For an accumulator, saving up for retirement, we need to think through, does it make sense to save on a Roth basis or a tax deferred basis or taxable, right? So generally, my general advice here is that for whatever we calculate that you're going to need to save for retirement, let's put those in retirement accounts. But in the taxable bucket, let's save for things like buying a rental property, buying the next house, whatever those big purchases might be. That needs to be outside of a retirement account.
And in a taxable account, or as we would call it, a brokerage account.
The pay-as-you-go account.
The pay-as-you-go, thank you, where you pay dividends and capital gains and all that stuff along the way. That money, if you're going to save it for a down payment on a house, beware. You need at least like 5 year to 7 year time horizon.
Right. We're still talking longer time horizon. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, we wouldn't want to take market risk for something that you might need in the next year, 18 months, even maybe 2 years. It needs to be a longer time horizon to take market risk. So going back to saving for retirement, Roth versus pre-tax, the general advice is if your taxable income is below the 32% bracket, save Roth. Okay, now taxable income and your gross income are two different numbers. Your gross income there's a lot of deductions before you get to taxable income, which determines whether, what your marginal tax rate is. Are you paying 32% on that next dollar, or are you paying still in the 24% bracket, paying 24% on that next dollar, right? So all of your above the line deductions from your total income, payroll deductions for health insurance, HSA contributions, pre-tax 401k contributions, and then below the line deductions like state and local income tax, the deduction for that, charitable, mortgage interest, all that's going to lower your total income down to your taxable income. So we're talking about a taxable income for a couple. It's about $383,000 for the year. That's taxable, not total income, but taxable income. So if it's below that threshold, it's probably better to save Roth. And again, we can look at this on an individualized basis and help you determine what's best for you. But in general, That would be the radio advice. So
Love
here we
it.
are.
Radio show advice. Here we go. That was the 8 minutes or the 90-second advice. Good.
Yep. So now some folks have the option in their 401k plan to contribute into a third money type. So we've got the Roth and the pre-tax, which is common. Almost everybody's got those options in their 401k. Some people have a third type that's called non-Roth after tax.
Non-Roth after tax.
And this is like the spillover category right here. So this year, an individual under the age of 50 can contribute $23,000 to their 401k. And that's whether they put it in Roth or pre-tax, doesn't matter. Or if they do a combination of the two, it's still a total limit of $23,000. But if they want to contribute more than that, and their 401k offers this non-Roth after-tax category, they can put even more money in there.
Let me go back really quick because I think you just said this, but I don't want to skip past it. So the $23,000 limit on someone under 50, it's not me, is my own contributions plus the employer, including the employers, or the employer's contribution match can be above it.
That's
it can be
in
above
addition.
It. So my personal contribution.
That's right.
That's good. Right. And what's the catch up for over 50?
For over 50s, it would be $30,500.
Okay, sorry to put you on the spot.
Yep.
Okay,
Gotcha.
Good math.
Thanks. So you can kind of spill over. You can contribute more in this category, but that contribution is not tax deductible, and the growth on that is growing tax deferred, unless you convert it to Roth.
And right, because it was called non-Roth, which means
non-Roth,
tax deferred, unless you take that non-Roth
after-tax money and convert it to Roth.
Yes. Beautiful.
And it seems like every 401k is different. Some 401k plans may offer automatic conversion. So like on a payroll basis, every contribution that into this category automatically converts over to Roth. Others may allow you to do it on a semi-annual basis or annual basis. Actually, we were working with somebody yesterday. Their plan only allows it on an annual basis. So just got to make sure if you're contributing to that money type that you're converting it to Roth, because
go ahead.
Tax-free growth is a lot better than taxable growth.
Yeah, it totally is. And just because, so these numbers start to sound kind of big. And I remember in my 30s, I had an advisor. It wasn't here when I was a client here. It was before that. But he said, you're going to need to save $33,000 a year to reach your goals. And I was like, that's insane based on what I was making at the time. I was like, I can never do that. But if you start to really think about it, and of course we have inflation adjusted dollars and incomes now from 25 years ago. But if we have a couple who is making a fairly decent income, they each make 100 and some each, and you're getting up there close to, let's say, $250,000. If they're setting aside 15% each.
So that's
you start to get pretty significant savings rates.
If you want to maintain your lifestyle in retirement, generally you're going to need to save about 15% of your income for retirement. If you start really young, maybe that percentage is lower to like 10.
Don't say that loud because I want my kids to be saving at least 15%.
If they're starting at 20, 10% is going to be plenty.
I'm going to take you out, Justin.
No. I can do the math. I can show you. It's going to be plenty.
I know you can. I trust you.
But if you wait till you're in your 40s and you start saving, 15% may not be enough. You might need to save like 20%.
Definitely.
So I think 15% is a good, radio show guideline, but that number could be different. So anyways, going back to the three categories here in some 401k plans, we would always want to convert that money over. I can't think of a reason why we wouldn't for anybody.
If it's allowed,
if it's allowed in your 401k plan. Okay. So always do that. And actually, the lingo for that is the mega backdoor Roth.
Just refers to it being in a 401k as a non-Roth.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So, that's what we call it, the mega backdoor Roth. Now, for individuals who maybe don't have that as an option in their 401k, and they make too much money to contribute to a Roth, there might be the option where they can do a backdoor Roth with a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. Now, again, that doesn't work for everybody. If that if you have other IRAs with a substantial, balance in there, there's this pro rata rule that messes up the regular backdoor Roth for people.
The math gets very complicated.
Yes. But let's just say you make too much money to be able to make a deductible IRA contribution. So you can still contribute to an IRA. It's just that contribution is not deductible. So now you've got after-tax money sitting in a pre-tax account where, again, the earnings on that are going to compound tax-deferred, not tax-free like we would like them. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have other IRA money, you can convert that to Roth, and it doesn't trigger extra tax.
Got it.
And that's so we like to do that for a lot of folks. Again, we'd probably need to see your situation and advise you whether that actually is a good strategy for you or not. But that is a method where you can get more money growing tax-free.
And it's literally a really fast transaction.
Well, it can be it certainly can be. A lot of times, like, we'll do this where somebody's contributing on a monthly basis to an IRA. Maybe it's $500 a month, and then like semi-annually, we'll convert that to Roth.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to worry about that money earning something.
The earnings you would be taxable income, but it's going to be a small enough dollar amount that it's really insignificant.
Okay.
So, yep. So I think that really addresses accumulators. The general advice, again, if you're below the 32% tax bracket with your taxable income, not gross income, but taxable income, generally do Roth. If you've got this non-Roth after-tax option and you want to contribute more than you're allowed to contribute to your Roth 401k, that's a great option for you, and make sure that you're converting that periodically. And then the IRA backdoor Roth is a good option for most people. Again, this would not work for an individual that's got a significant amount of money already in an IRA.
And I want to get a little bit weedy here because when you talk about that federal tax rate of 32%,
yes,
that's your top marginal rate. When you get your tax return back, there's probably that front sheet shows you, okay, your top marginal rate was 32, but your effective rate
was less,
probably less.
Yes. And so it's a blended structure. So the first dollar, there's brackets, and the money that goes into the first bracket's taxed at that rate, like 10%. The money that goes into the next bracket, just that additional dollars, taxed at 12, and then it's, 22 and 24, 32. And so it's only the incremental dollar, that next dollar that falls into that tax bracket, into that marginal rate, that's taxed at that rate, where the dollars before that were taxed at their marginal rate. So you have some money that's taxed at 10, 12, 22, 24, and so on. So
got it.
Yep.
That's why you're here. Thank
you. Yeah. If your tax bracket's 32%, it doesn't mean you paid 32% on everything you earned. That's only right. The money that's in that bracket. So I think we want to shift the focus now to would it make sense for someone who's already accumulated a lot of wealth, they're looking at retirement, or maybe they just retired, should they do Roth conversions? And the general sweet spot here is from the time that somebody retires until the time they start Social Security. That's the sweet spot to do Roth conversions. And the reason is once you've retired, your taxable income's low and Social Security hasn't started yet.
Okay.
And so there's this time period. And remember, what we're trying to move money from the taxable bucket to the tax-free bucket and pay the least amount of tax possible.
So
avoid our Social Security getting taxed. Remember, that was the initial why. And when we think through this time period, how much could you convert without paying a higher tax rate on it than what you would have paid if you had saved Roth before? And so I think we left this out at the beginning, but the math works out. If the question is, should you save pre-tax or Roth? If you're taxed at, for example, let's say you've got $10,000 to contribute this year. If you're taxed at 20%, the math works out such that if you put it in a tax-deferred account and then you pay tax on it later, it would work out the same as if you had invested $8,000, remember, 20% less. So if you did Roth and you you would have taxes withheld. So now you've got $8,000 instead of 10. So $8,000 growing tax free
at the same rate,
at the same rate of return, and then take that money out. Now the Roth, when you take the money out, you pay zero tax, and then the tax deferred, you've got to pay 20%. After you paid the 20% tax on the tax deferred in retirement, you'd be left with the same dollars that you've got in Roth.
And
so it's equal.
Brilliant.
It doesn't matter whether you're saving pre-tax or Roth, as long as that money's growing at the same rate, they're equal. It just depends on, are you going to be in a lower tax rate later, or are you in a lower tax bracket now?
Okay, and that's the difference between if you've saved all your $1 million in a Roth IRA versus a traditional. $1 million in a Roth is a tax-free millionaire. $1 million in a traditional is about 25% less.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. There it is.
Pretty much.
Right.
Yep.
But the math ends up working out sort of if all else is exactly equal.
Right. And so the wild card here is, can we get Social Security income tax-free? And then the RMDs, because those RMDs are going to get big, which likely in your 80s will force you into higher tax brackets, 80s and beyond. So that's the first question is, how much can we convert over to Roth so that your Social Security is not going to be taxed? And that's Social Security is taxed on a ratio of how much other taxable income you have compared to your Social Security benefit. So if you've got more taxable income than your Social Security, most of your Social Security is going to get taxed. But if your other income, and Social Security calls this your provisional income, is lower than your Social Security benefit, you're going to get more of your Social Security tax-free. And in fact, if you're filing a joint tax return and your taxable income's below $32,000 for the year, your Social Security is 100% tax-free. And for single filers, that's a $25,000 threshold. So again, can we convert enough so that your provisional income, your other taxable income, is at this, call it $32,000 threshold or lower, then you're going to get Social Security tax-free. That's huge.
It is. Okay, so I'm going to ask a normal person question here. Okay. So you mentioned this all is kind of key from the time that you retire to the time you start taking Social Security.
Yes.
Let's say it's 6 years.
Okay.
What does a typical person live on in that 6 years?
So that's where it comes into the situation. For which group of people is this going to work? You're going to need other income. And so we talked about the 3 money types a minute ago. Mm-hmm. That taxable bucket is going to be really helpful for you to live off of while you're doing Roth conversions.
In the gap.
That's right. And you're gonna have money to pay those taxes in the meantime.
That's right. I was so interesting that I asked that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
That's where that taxable.
I thought so.
Yes, that taxable bucket is very useful. So if you're listening to this and you've got money in all 3 tax types and you're near retirement, Roth conversions are more likely to be beneficial for you.
Beautiful. I love that people are listening to this and they're probably seeing the light bulbs go off in my head as
boom,
they can hear we learned something again. Here we go.
So as you're doing these Roth conversions, we're trying to convert them at the lowest rate. And if you're living on your taxable bucket of money, you're going to realize capital gains. But it's important to know that there's a threshold. If your total income for a couple this year is about $94,000 or less, that all of the capital gains that fall into your total income below $94,000, those capital gains are tax-free. So you're going to pay very little tax there. And even if you're over that threshold, that's fine. It's not going to cause you to pay a higher tax rate on your Roth conversions. So capital gains stack on top of ordinary income. And having more capital gains is not going to push your ordinary income into a higher tax rate. So that's why if you've got this taxable bucket to live on, say in this example for 6 years, mm-hmm. you can live on that money, realize a bunch of capital gains, tax-free potentially, or even if they are taxed, probably taxed at 15%, unless you're doing huge Roth conversions, they could get taxed at 20. But you're living on that income and it's not affecting the rate of what the tax rate that you're paying on the Roth conversion.
Phenomenal.
So that's where this really makes sense. And then The other part of the equation is the timing of when you start Social Security. You could start it as early as 62, or you could delay as long as 70. And it's more often going to be beneficial if you wait longer, towards 70, because your Social Security benefit's bigger. And remember, I talked about this being a ratio, right? It's a ratio of that provisional income, that other income, compared to your Social Security income. So if you can get your Social Security amount to be larger, delaying Social Security, then there's more wiggle room there where you can have more of your Social Security not taxed.
Man, you know what would be nice is if we knew how long we were going to live.
We don't.
I thought you could do that. You can build good investment portfolios. If you could just tell me how long I'm going to be here, that would be great.
Ask the insurance company. They probably know.
They do. Yeah, they do.
That's the key group here where it makes sense. And I think the next question would be like, well, how much do you convert each year? And we generally see that converting up to the top of the 22% tax bracket, the way the tax brackets are structured now, is the optimal threshold for most people. Now, that's not the true for everybody. So again, radio advice here.
Okay. Yeah.
Generally, the top of the 22% tax bracket. And that's because that generally is corresponding with a couple other thresholds. So that's the main thing being the net investment income tax. So if you're a couple and your income's over $250,000, you're going to pay an extra 3.8%.
On
on the conversion.
On any conversion. Oh, yeah.
Over that threshold.
Got it.
And then we get into and that pushes us up into the 24% tax bracket for doing, for converting more. Mm-hmm. So now it's the difference between 22 and 24. So there's 2% more tax there. Then you've got the net investment income tax. That's 3.8. So now we're talking about 5.8% more that you're paying on that conversion. So generally, that's the threshold that we're working under, is converting up to the top of the 22% tax bracket. And if we can do that between the time you retire and the time you start Social Security, there's a good chance that maybe we've made enough ground that that we can keep your provisional income low enough that Social Security is tax-free, and we've gotten your RMDs lower where it's not going to push you into higher tax brackets later on in life. Yeah. Now, another consideration is if you're over 65, you're on Medicare, there's these darn IRMA premiums.
IRMA. IRMA.
Yeah, what does that stand for?
It stands for, I Googled it a minute ago. It's income-related monthly adjustment amount.
Yep.
It's a fee you pay on top of your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums if you make a yearly income above the annual thresholds. What are the annual thresholds, Justin?
We've got a whole sheet here that explains all that.
Yeah,
you're throwing it back at me.
It depends. We hate the it depends. Don't go into the thresholds. That's advanced manure. Advanced manure.
We hate IRMA.
Yeah, all right, we do.
But the reason we hate IRMA is because for an individual, it could be up to a $6,000 surcharge per year. Mm-hmm. Extra. So for a married couple, we're talking about $12,000. So if you're doing big Roth conversions after 65, when you've got Medicare, that's an extra tax that you don't necessarily think about, but you'll feel it because it's going to reduce your, it's good. If you start at Social Security, then it'd reduce your Social Security amount because it's paying for those Part B and D premiums, but. So we got to think about IRMA. We got to think about the net investment income tax, and we're going to work all those numbers. But generally, the converting up to the top of the 22% tax bracket is generally the sweet spot. So one of the last things that we take into consideration for Roth conversions is what is your legacy plan. If you want to leave it all to charity, then potentially, we got to see if the Roth conversions are beneficial for your lifetime, like everything that we've been talking about. But if you're going to leave it to charity, they can receive that income from your IRA tax-free, and they don't pay any tax on it. So why should you pay tax on it if it's going to go to charity anyway? Mm-hmm. There's no sense in you paying the tax on it. And if you want to start giving to a charity and you're older than 70 and a half, you can start doing what's called a QCD, Qualified Charitable Donation. And that's income that's excluded. It does not count at all as income for you. So.
Because you're taking it out of a qualified or traditional account and immediately contributing it to a charity. So you don't get taxed on it. They get it at a stepped up cost basis, I presume.
Or they get it tax free. They don't pay tax on it.
Okay,
so
good.
It's it totally avoids taxation. But the key is that it's got to go from your IRA directly to the charity.
Oh, good. Good to know.
Cannot come to you first. If it does, then it's taxable income.
Don't mess that up. Yeah.
Also, when you get your 1099-R for that year, the custodian that's holding your IRA is not going to know whether it was a QCD or not. And so you're going to need to tell your CPA, hey, I made a QCD. I sent it straight to the charity. This was the dollar amount, because it's not going to match what's on the 1099, and they will need to make that adjustment. So
Awesome.
Don't pay tax on money twice.
Amazing.
Or that you don't need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if your legacy plan is to leave the money to your kids, even if we see that it may not provide you a benefit during your lifetime, it may be advantageous to do Roth conversions from a legacy perspective if you want to leave it to your children. Because when they inherit the money, if it's still in the tax-deferred category, they've got 10 years to pull it out and pay tax on it. They're probably in the higher income years of their life. So they're going to be paying very high tax rates on it. But if you've converted it to Roth and you've converted and paid a lower tax rate, they can receive that money tax-free. And they've got 10 years past your lifetime for that money to compound and grow tax-free.
Oh, so they don't actually have to do it on a 10-year basis. They can do it all at the end.
They can do it all at the end.
Got it.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So this is the kind of stuff that makes regular people's brains scramble, right? And it, like, as you know, this is the thing. Success does create complexity.
It does.
And so I could see people saying, "Oh, I never want to have to deal with all that. It's too complicated." But you know what? You do. You want to be able to, you want these complications because it's the reason you would be diligent in your youth, in your younger years in saving, because there's professionals like Justin out here who can really guide us through that. It does get complicated, but it shouldn't give you a huge headache. This isn't brain surgery or life and death. This is, are we making the best decision? It's not, there are some wrong decisions, but it's not like it's going to cost you your life. It just, you want to make the best decision so it doesn't cost you a ton of money.
That's right. And when we do these analysis for clients, we're going to use our software that can measure the difference. Is this Roth conversion beneficial? Is contributing on a Roth basis versus pre-tax basis beneficial? Bringing in all of your unique considerations. Do you have a pension? Do you not? There's a lot that goes into this. And with our software, we can actually measure the compounding effect of making, a Roth conversion decision and give you the guidance, show you what the benefit is, and help you make an informed decision.
That's awesome. And again, I always speak for the normal people, right? The people who aren't necessarily steeped in this every day like Justin is and loves taxes and all these things.
You're avoiding taxes.
You love avoiding taxes. You are amazing. And I just think, if you listen to this, the first 18 minutes, pretty basic answers. Then it got a little more complicated. But, like I said, I have to hear this many, many times over, just to process it so it sinks in. Justin says this stuff all the time, so he's got a really good grip on it. And, it's just fun to do these with you, Justin, because I really like picking your brain. I like kind of stopping you and going, wait, does that make sense? Is that how this works?
Explain that, yeah.
Yeah, and so any listener, you want to come and pick Justin's brain, you can do that too.
Come on.
Or if you have a question and you want us to answer, just email it to us at moneypig@goodwininvestment.com. Thanks again for being with us, Justin.
It was fun.
Awesome. And just always, as financial advisors, I like to remind you that we manage and rebalance portfolios. We've had success at creating some pretty good portfolios over the years too. But the unique value is that we work to understand our clients' individual goals so we can have these types of planning conversations that are so personal and unique to each individual. So, hey, thanks again. Shout out to our editor, Noah. Have a blast with this one. We'll see you all next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
The Money Pick podcast is hosted by Reid Trego, a financial advisor at Goodwin Investment Advisory. This podcast is intended to share information and perspectives, but should not be interpreted as legal, financial, or tax advice. The opinions shared by participants are not necessarily endorsed by the company. Goodwin Investment Advisory is regulated by the SEC, and the company operates in compliance with applicable securities laws and regulations.